Oh, good afternoon, everyone. This is Arthur for Intrinsic Truth again. Verse I want to consider today is just one. It's found in Isaiah 54, verse 5. And this is specifically addressing, the issue of Unitarianism. Is the concept of one God, one singular entity, one being in isolation, a concept that we can prescribe to the Bible? There are many passages like the one I'm going to present today that speak of God in a plural form. And I want to consider just one verse today because this is an important one. If we are a Unitarian believers, we believe in one God, where we do not consider Jesus as God, we only accept one singular being, and Jesus is somehow lesser God or a created being or something like this. Isaiah 54:5 poses a major issue in this kind of line of thinking. It says the following: "For thy maker is thy husband, and the Lord of hosts is his name." I don't need to read more. I will read more in a minute. But the word for maker and the word for husband is actually in the plural. So those are nouns, or you can even translate them as participles. So it says that Yahweh is our makers and our husbands. I am at a loss of words how to explain this if we believe only in one singular entity. If we have the Father and the Son on the same level, equal to one another, complementing one another, being in a relationship as Adam and Eve are, then I think we really need to consider this verse in particular as an important one. I have never heard of a good explanation under Unitarian concepts that this is well explained, that our Yahweh, Yahweh of hosts, is our or your makers, in other words, creators. Actually, it says so in other verses as well. And then he is called your husbands. Now, these kinds of verses are found all over the Old Testament, where God is expressed in a plural form. Now, obviously, the word Elohim is always in a plural, well, almost always in a plural, referring to the God of heaven, although sometimes we do find maybe about, I would say maybe 50, maybe even a little bit more occurrences where the word El or Eloh occurs in the singular, referring to the God of heaven. Most of the time, it is referring in the plural Elohim. However, most of the time, the nouns or verbs or adjectives or participles that follow or are in construct with the word Elohim are in a singular. However, sometimes we do find them in the plural, like here in Isaiah 54:5. In Isaiah 54:5, this Yahweh is clearly expressed in the original, in the plural form, in the plural nouns, makers and husbands. I propose that God does not live in isolation, as some propose it to be. He lives rather in a relationship between the Father and the Son. We have a biblical statement, and we must leave behind our own framework of how God operates and how God looks like. We must accept what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches here very plainly that God is our makers and our husbands. We need to take this into consideration because this may be a point where our framework breaks down in the singular, solitary individual or being. Clearly, God is presented here as a multiple personhood between the Father and Son. I would imagine at least that much, because clearly the Bible otherwise would be promoting polytheism, but it does not. So it obviously explains the concept of God, the concept of divinity, in a different way that we often understand. I invite you to comment. I invite you to struggle with this passage, and I invite you to give a good explanation, especially if you are a Unitarian.